message of he taught us to love, I think, breaks down to what I alluded to earlier, where I think faith can just boil down to a quick philosophy of life if we're not careful. And that philosophy is, love others, be kind, golden rule. And yes, these are great things. Absolutely. These are ways to live a good life. Absolutely. But it doesn't, that's where it starts. That's not where it ends. And I always get really refreshed and renewed when I hear the ideas of Jesus didn't come just to fix what was wrong, but came to build the new thing. And that, right. If you hear certain ideas, that makes a lot more sense to me, or that feels more right to me, and puts more pieces in place than just love each other. Now, I'm not saying they have to be mutually exclusive. I think, yeah, of course, he taught us to love each other 100%. Also, he's building, he's putting pieces in place to build the kingdom of God, right? And bring it in and usher it and open the doors and the gates for that. However, I don't want to, language breaks down very quickly when we're trying to describe these things, but it is more than that.
Yeah, it actually is the first thing he says in the Gospel of Matthew when he starts his public ministry, is that the kingdom of God is near. And this is exactly what John the Baptist says too, the kingdom of God is at hand. And when we look at Jesus's parables, he spoke in parables about 35% of the time. He mostly spoke about the kingdom of God and its value, why you should find it, why it's important, what does it mean, what is there for you. And so he is presenting a completely different point of view than the religious leaders at the time, who were really presenting a point of view of a structure around how you can interact with God in a very specific way. Jesus comes and he's breaking down those boundaries all along the way, saying that really what you want to focus on is being in the kingdom of God by believing in me, and the new structure is going to be so much better. It's going to be the lighter yoke, the better path to take. I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can talk about why following Jesus is better for your life today on earth, not just when you die. So he wanted people to get that message, and he wanted them to understand that what he was saying was true because of the miracles that he performed. So it's worth spending time talking about it, and sort of, again, language can break down, but on the other hand, language can build up. And as we learn the terms that Jesus wants us to talk about his life and his kingdom, the way he wants us to talk about him, we can see ourselves living in that space even today. That's what I like about it. It gives me hope for a place that I can be today, where I can feel connected to God and around people who are like-minded with me, a community, and we can focus on the message of Jesus, which includes love each other and take care of each other. That's how I see it in a nutshell.
I like that. I think that's a great answer. Now, in order for this to happen, Jesus had to die. Why did Jesus die? Why did it have to be this way?
Well, I think when people ask that question, they're really asking it in two parts, right? Part A is, why did Jesus die? It's the legal question about it. Like, why was Jesus put to death? Okay. And then there is what I would say is, the spiritual reason behind it. So legally, he was put to death because he was convicted of being guilty of treason by the Roman government. And many things came into play as to why that happened, which we talk about in our podcast, Journey to Calvary. Many specific things happened that led to it, but nevertheless, Jesus was not guilty of what he was charged. Again, sinless, blameless. And yet the Roman government declared it to be so, and the punishment for what his crime was crucifixion, a common way to die when you're guilty of a crime punishable by death. So that's the legal reason. I think we can both agree that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now the tricky one.
Yeah, the tricky one is that His death was a literal sacrifice. He literally sacrificed his life as an atonement. Christian words you hear a lot, to atone for the sin of humans. And this was the actual job, his actual mission. He was sent by God the Father to earth for this specific mission. And he knew it from the beginning, from before he left heaven, that he would end up dying a sacrificial death. And we know that because he speaks to it very early on in his ministry about what was going to happen, and even telling his disciples along the way, this is what's going to happen. We're going to go to Jerusalem, and the religious leaders, the teachers of the law, are going to conspire against me, and I'm going to die. So it was no surprise to him. I think he loved his time on earth as a human. I think he very much enjoyed spending a portion of his existence in human form, and he loved the people he met and the friendships that he had. And he had every emotion you can have. So it wouldn't have been an easy thing just to say, okay, well, no problem, I'll just go die. It still was incredibly hard. But his mission would not have been complete without him dying. Make no mistake about it. The death is the key to the completion of the job. And even he says it on the cross right before he dies. He says, "It is finished." He had to die, taking on the sins of the world. But he did die.
So tell me more about
us.
that. Tell me more about the significance of his resurrection.
Well, he died. We're just talking about, but now we're talking about what happened next. And what happened next is that he was resurrected 3 days later. And this is the part of the story that many people have a question about. What does it signify? That's the question. What is the significance of it? It's pretty clear that if Jesus hadn't come back to life, he would have just been a good man who had some great teachings, who led a group of people on the earth in the 1st century AD. And his message was not totally clear, but great, in that it taught people important ethical and moral things. The death and resurrection, most importantly, really is the cornerstone of the entire Christian faith. Without resurrection, we wouldn't be where we are today. And so when people say, I don't know, did he really come back to life or not? Or, is that just made up? This is where you really find your faith. This is where you either believe it's true and you believe that Jesus said, that you believe that who Jesus said he was is who he is, or you don't. And you have to wrap your mind around the fact that he came back to life. He lived on the earth another 40 days, literally saw hundreds of people, and then went back to heaven. And so, yeah, did this happen or not? What is the significance? It's 100% the focal point of the story of Jesus. And we still see that today in the church.
Yeah, so I found a quote that sums up my feelings. This is Lewis. The New Testament writers speak as if Christ's achievement in rising from the dead was the first event of its kind in the whole history of the universe. He is the first fruits, the pioneer of life. He has forced open a door that has been locked since the death of the first man. He has met, fought, and beaten the king of death. Everything is different because he has done so.
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to believe? Are you going to not? This is where it is, right? And it feels hard to say that, and it feels hard to boil it down to that point, but that is what it is, right?